Hello and welcome back to Parents Canada Talk Radio on News Talk Saga 960. I'm Lisa Durante and I'm here with my co-host,
Jason Thompson.
Hey, Jason. So how has your week been in parenting?
Oh, it's a really interesting transitional summer. I've mentioned this a few times on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one who's off to high school in the fall, and she's, moving really to her mom's place as a more predominant thing. So there's coming to terms with that. But the big thing this week was having to read the 18-year-old The Riot Act yesterday.
Ooh.
Slept in again till 1, wow. Which is great when
I've
you're
never
15
done
and
that.
that sort of stuff. Yeah, I know, right? I get it. Stayed up late playing video games with friends and stuff like that. But I'm like, listen, I need you to understand, in 3.5 weeks, this is it. You're a full-grown adult. I have to let go of the wings, sort of thing. And so, Dad kind of goes back and forth and that sort of stuff. And then something really, really interesting happened. It wasn't just, Jason going red in the face and going, you need to be responsible and you need to budget. You need to. My son is, I've mentioned, he's very stoic, right? And I've always been somewhat concerned about the emotional intelligence side, is how he'll be able to deal with things like adversity and being knocked down and stuff like that. And I'm watching him yesterday. I'm watching the body language and stuff like that. And he's fretting with his hands. I've never seen him do this before. And it's really valuable for me to watch this, because I'm saying he's stressed. And when I'm saying to him, I need answers from you, and he's not able to give them, that's where the real conversation started. Because what he wanted to say to me was, it's going to be okay. You're perhaps overly concerned. I hear what your concerns are. And so he wasn't able to say that. And at the same time, I was able to say to him, what am I really saying when I'm freaking out like this? And what I'm really saying is, I'm worried. I'm concerned. I'm paranoid. I want somebody to reassure me. Because, as a parent, you're kind of at the top of the food chain in some ways. And sometimes, you get into the reads on stuff and it just starts to roll, right? And so where we ended up was, this is an opportunity for him to understand what empathy is, meaning, he has a responsibility. I buy the food, I'm helping pay for the university, like all that sort of stuff, to say, I see that person has been triggered by something and I can contribute in a positive way. And the reason that that's important is, I'm not asking him to take care of me. What I am asking him is to read the room. And as an adult, that becomes really important in your relationships, to be able to say, you know what, my partner is triggered by something, having anxiety. I could go right back at that anxiety as hard as I could. Or what I could do is say, hey, I see you, I see your anxiety, and I'm going to tell you why it's going to be okay. So we got there. And I think in a weird way, because that is not nearly where we started. Yeah. And I'm still panicked, of course. I'm a dad. But I feel a little more confident and a little bit more hopeful. But more importantly, I think we had a far more important conversation than I expected we'd have.
Yeah. That does sound... I think because there have been times where the reading the room is something that my husband and I talk about to our kids, because you just have to read people's body language and understand when is a good time to approach, even us asking for something. When is a good time? So kind of read how mommy is doing before you ask for something, because it'll very much depend. It'll determine the answer that you're going to get. So if you want something.
I did some research on this for a keynote I was giving. 7% of communication is verbal. 93% is not, which is that's a really, really good and valuable tool.
Yeah. And so my kids just don't have it yet. They're 9 and 7. Maybe they will. But I find that there's even, there are other adults who just don't have that. And there are times, there have been times in the past when I've worked and I've been very stressed and someone walks in and kind of just asks me to take something on. And I'm like, and they were, on my team. And I'm like, did you not see... Did you not read my body language here? I'm not doing well. This is probably not a good time to ask me.
It's funny, but that's something I spend a lot of time, and we were just talking before we went on air about a new keynote I'm developing about we're focusing on the wrong things. And one of the really big areas is the idea of kind of constructing a concept of empathy, not compassionate empathy, which is I'm going to do something to fix this for you, but look at the other person, see where they are, and see where. Have an understanding of that, right? Like real empathy is putting yourself in another person's shoes. Yeah. We got heavy super fast here. What's going on in your week in parenting? What's happening in your world?
Honestly, it has been a magical week for me. So I'm on mommy vacation.
Congratulations.
So both of my children, for the very first time, are at away camp, and it's amazing that I woke up this morning. and I didn't have anybody else to take care of. And so it's like all the mom shifts, the morning shift, the afternoon shift, the dinner shift, the bedtime shift, that has all gone away. And I just have all of this time. But at the same time, I'm struggling with that because I'm used to being a parent is actually, it's a verb. Like there's work involved, and I do a lot of heavy lifting all throughout the day. Even when I'm working, I'm thinking and doing stuff for them. And I have to say, even though that they've been gone, I'm still doing a lot of stuff and doing a lot of the organizing, but it's just that day to day. Like this morning, the kitchen was immaculate. I'm like, wow. I'm like,
it's like Wile E. Coyote, right? You run off the cliff, your feet are still moving, but there's nothing underneath you. Yeah, it's a hard thing to get used to, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's been a little unnerving and very unsettling, and there have been a lot of times where we'll look around the house and say, well, now what? And so it was last night, I was like, well, I'm not going to stick around the house because then I'm going to drive myself crazy, because then thinking about all the worries that I have, because there are a lot of worries, having them out without me. They're 9 and 7. And so I ended up doing a Pilates class just so that I had my mind and my body was being active, and I was focused on something else, because otherwise and then I just went right home, read a book, and slept, and was able to wake up so that I didn't have to keep thinking about them.
How are you feeling now?
I'm okay. Like, it comes in waves. So like on the drive here, because it was quiet, I was just listening to music. So you're in your head, and all the worries for my 7-year-old, first time she's away, does she need a cuddle? Is she missing home? Has she gotten hurt? Because it's a very rocky terrain. And did she pass the swim test? So is she having fun in the lake? So many things. And I think it's been raining. And I know my youngest one really doesn't like the rain. So all these things are going through my mind. And so I just try to put them into perspective. And what you will probably be doing in September is knowing that I've continued to reinforce you have a voice. If there's something wrong, you need to talk to someone. If you need help, make sure that you reach out, but also look to other people, other kids. If they're sad, make sure that you're helping them, and then someone will do that to you as well.
That second part is really good advice, because I've been doing a lot of the first part, but not the second part. So I'm going to take that away. As a really good.
Yeah. So it's that reminder that they're good kids.
They're good kids. We're good parents. We're doing our best. And this week we're talking about a specific aspect of parenting, which is this whole idea of competitive parenting. I can't wait to see the reality show for this one, I think, in the end. So let's talk about this. Let's unpack the concept of competitive parenting. Because I reach out on social media, and I reach out to friends and colleagues and say, hey, this is what we're talking about this week. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten the exact same reaction from every single person. Okay. I get a story. Hockey moms will tell me about what's happening at the arena. Sports dance moms will tell me what's happening in the dance studio. There's a whole sense of competition, and everybody seems to have a story. Mm-hmm. At the end of which they go like this. They go, wait a second. What do you mean by competitive parenting? Mm-hmm. And so let's unpack that for a little bit, because I think we've read a bunch of source material. I see 3 kind of specific facets here. There's the parent versus parent, or the parent versus zeitgeist, the world around us. There's the kid versus kid type of competitive, and then there's the one I thought was unique to me, but I think the way that you've put it was really nice, which is internal in the family. So for me, it's my competition with my exes, with yours. It's in your
sometimes,
family.
Yeah. Sometimes it's within your own family, with your partner. You have a competing or a different approach, and so you're going to.
So let's start with the first one, this idea of parent versus parent. You told me, what was the concept you told me about?
It's the parent versus parent, not the internal. I call it the mommy wars.
The mommy wars.
Yeah, they're alive and well, unfortunately. It riles me up, because if there's anything about me, if there's any kind of, sorry, I'm running out of words.
Issue.
It's the issue. It's the thing that I'm most passionate about, is about supporting women supporting women. And Madeleine Albright has this amazing quote that says, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And so once you become a parent, and even once you become pregnant, it's all of a sudden you're put into this ring of competition against everyone else. And even though you don't want to be in it, you're just placed into this arena, and every choice you make aligns you with a team. And there's many, many factions. There's the breastfeeding moms, the formula feeding moms, the cloth diaper moms, there's the organic mom. It goes on and on and on. And every decision you make, every choice you make for yourself then becomes an alignment to a specific team. And there's still this idea that the moment you pick one side, it means that you have to be against the other. So, if you breastfeed, then that means that you have to look down upon those who formula feed. And I think there's starting to become a movement of women who are starting to kind of say, okay, this isn't good. We don't want to be part of this. And yet it's still kind of, and so there's a lot of, one of the things I said about just the formula fed versus breastfeeding, I'm like, a fed baby is best. And I think a lot more people are saying that as well. So it's just you're put into this ring. And then as you go on with raising your child and you keep making more choices, there's more of that competition. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in is where does that come from? What is fueling that? And change management is my background. And if you look at the data, anyone who is going through change, what they're trying to do is they're trying to gain some control. And parenting, you have absolutely no control over your situation. And so every choice you make, you want to make sure it is the right choice. And so you're going to put a stake in the ground and you're going to say, this is the very best choice. This is going to make for a very good kid. And I'm going to be a great mom because of doing this. And then that starts the mommy wars. I wonder if there's daddy wars because more and more dads are getting involved and engaged in primary care.
Well, it's funny. I had this conversation last night about the idea of the kind of the competitive approach to things. And I don't take a competitive view of almost anything. Like I run my own businesses. I call my competitors, that's air quoting there, I guess you can't see that on radio. I call my competitors and I find ways that we can work together, and that, this whole idea of cooperation and co-opetition, which seems to be on the rise and that sort of stuff. But my partner said to me at the time, maybe I'm just hardwired for this, right? Like every single thing is that competitive side of things. And it really gave me pause for a second to say, how do you navigate something like that where everything is a score keep, everything is, the question I asked was, does that type of competition, because there is probably healthy types of competition that where we can learn to develop things like grit and rebounding and things like that, but does that type of competition ever bring joy, or does it generate anxiety? And that my case I was making for a person who I've been with for 10 years is it does nothing but create anxiety. I'm sure she's listening right now and just scribbling down notes furiously going, but there was this one time, and she may very well be right. But I think you're right. And that ignition point is something I'm curious about as well.
Yeah. Well, if you just, it does cause anxiety, and there have been studies done on moms around depression and confidence levels. And so the confidence levels continue, it just dips. And so we're trying to regain confidence by, promoting the decisions that we have made, trying to make ourselves feel better, and yet our confidence continues to dip. And the anxiety between parents, trying to keep up with others, trying to make decisions based on what other people are making because you want to be their friend or whatever. It is impacting, and even depression levels, the postpartum depression, all of that stuff just kind of it's just amplified because of it.
That amplified is really good. So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're actually going to talk with a parenting coach about where this comes from and what we can do about it. And we want to hear some more from you. If you want to reach out, you can find us on social media at Parents Canada. You can give us a call at 416-640-0200. In the meantime, we'll be back at Parents Canada Radio on News Talk Saga 960. Welcome back to Parents Canada Talk Radio. You're listening to Jason Thompson and
Lisa Durante.
Wow, that was a pretty big first segment. I always love when my head is swimming because it really does help me gain that empathy, that understanding, a perspective that I might not have in the same way because of my own personal experience. So I think it's really interesting. And so what we're talking about is this competition or competitive parenting. And we talked about it from a few angles, but the one I think that we're really going to focus on today is, I love the way you put it, is the mommy wars, right? Is the I'm doing something, they're doing something, and how does that interact with each other? And the idea of, is this, are we going to war against each other? Because you belong to one tribe, does that mean you have to look down on another tribe? And that is a really important thing. And so we're going to talk to Lisa Canning, who is an author and parenting coach. She has actually a new book called The Possibility Mom, and I'm actually excited to hear a little bit more about this and the idea of parental coaching? Because that seems to really be a concept that is really emerging for parents like us, sort of thing. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I love your enthusiasm already. We want to talk to you about competitive parenting.
Yeah. So, one of the things we were talking about just before giving you a ring is the mommy wars. And so really want to, let's start. What do you think is fueling this competition, not only just amongst moms, but, all parents? What do you say there?
I think we're in a time where self-worth and individuality is so important. I think there's wonderful things about this. Like, it's wonderful that we focus inward and look at who we are and look at, what our life says about how we are and all these things. However, it can also be very dangerous when our self-worth is tied up in external accomplishments. And so, to be honest, to answer your question, I think that's where things come from. That's where it starts from, is what is my child doing? And how is this a reflection of me?
Yeah.
And I hate to put it out there. It's the first thing I'm going to say, but
go for it.
Just personal experience. That was very much my just experience, not only in parenting, but in everything. I was competitive in my career. I was competitive in how good looking my husband was. I was competitive in what my house
Hold on. How good looking is your husband then?
He is extremely good looking. I mean, if you're listening to this, you are extremely good looking. And so, of course, why would we think that this wouldn't extend to our parenting? So we see this in how athletic is my child? How academic is my child? Did my child get into the best program? Did my child get into rep hockey? All these things. I think personally that's where it's from. It stems from a sense of, what does this say about me?
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I completely agree. And there are times where it's even that the kids are almost their do-over. Everything that they wish that they would have done, they're kind of priming their kids so that they can carry the torch or continue carrying the torch. There are, my kids are in competitive swimming, and there are parents who were competitive swimmers. I have nothing to do with the sport. My kids just wanted to go into it. And so you see them wanting to push them so that they too can get the medals, and they will every race they're like, oh, I won this race in this time. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Let me just say that this is also subconscious. I think for most parents,
this is a good point.
This is completely subconscious. You're not. In my early days of motherhood, I had no idea what was pushing me to make sure my child was, number one and always got good grades. And it only took for me personally the experience of another child who didn't naturally do as well academically, and realizing I was having an extremely irrational emotional response. And for me, that's where my aha happened. Oh my gosh, this is actually more about me than it is about the child. So I do want to make the point that I think for the majority of parents, this is completely not even on their surface. It's completely subconscious.
So what kind of, with that in mind, what kind of impact does this have, do you think, on the parent? And then what kind of impact does this have on the child?
I think it becomes exhausting, because I think what happens is then we can push and push and push and pursue something that may not exist or may not be for the child's best interest. The other thing I think that it can result in is also never being satisfied. I think just feeling we made it into this round of the speech competition. Well, what's the next round? Or my child won all these ribbons at this dance competition. Well, now I need to go to the national level, just for example. And so I think sometimes it can fuel a sense of I'm not really happy with anything, and always chasing that next big accomplishment.
I get that actually a fair bit from some of my friends. It's they seem unhappy because they think just this one more thing will solve it. And then the one more thing happens, and it's just this one more thing will solve it, and then I'll be happy at that point. It seems that that classic line is "success is in the journey" is lost on our modern society because we're so focused on achieving this concept of big. I do this whole thing on make tiny changes to Earth, and I talk about that our benchmark for so much is make it to the big time and the big leagues so that you can have the big house and the big car and things like that. And the truth seems to be that it's actually the inverse that makes the difference, which is focusing on the tiny, incredible moments in the journey.
100%. You know, I've got 7 kids, ages 10 and under.
Hold on, back
And
up, back up, back up, back up. 7 kids, ages. Are you a superhero?
No, no. We are just
Wow.
very fertile people. Yes, so 7 kids. And one of the gifts of having 7 kids is that I've had to do just that, exactly what you were describing. Appreciate the small moments, appreciate the small wins, and also appreciate the individuality of my kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's an interesting thing of having so many. I kind of see, you know, different parts of my personality, different parts of my husband's personality, and then completely different parts that are just innately them. And I think that's what we have to remember at the heart of competition is that are we honoring this child's individuality and their individual strengths and their individual personality, and letting perhaps interests and activities stem from them.
Yeah. So a question for you. So you do, with 7 children, is there any kind of competition with amongst your children, either for, you know, if one child has something that the other child wants, and, you know, you just said they're individually have individual needs. So what you give to one may not be the same thing that you need to give to another. How do you deal with that, or do you see that at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we have, in a large family, they learn, you know, they have to figure it out quickly. Like, they learn they have to share, and they learn that just things will not be fun if they're going to continue down a pathway that is potentially selfish or what have you. So when it comes to competition amongst each other, I would say that they kind of have to naturally just figure out if they want to have a peaceful experience or if they want to have a desired, you know, activity. They know the consequences that mommy will take away the thing or the toy or the game or whatever if we can't figure out a way to all get along. I think that's not unique to large families. That's every family size. But yeah, I think it's I think when we can see a child and really get to know them and remember that they are completely separate from ourselves and completely separate from our self-worth, we are beginning in an amazing spot.
It really is that opportunity to say, don't look at having kids as a block to which you can apply a parenting book across the board. It's manage the moment, manage the individual, manage the behaviors in a way that really lifts them up. I have no statistical data that backs this up, but the line I love to use is you can only affect kids about 10% as much as you think you can, which is just a hyperbolic way of saying, hey, take a step back and really understand that you have realms in which you can affect. So, you know, a kid who does not have strong math skills, that doesn't mean you're going to make them into a mathematician. You may be able to get them by, but they may have strong skills. What's the old Albert Einstein quote is you can't teach a fish to climb a ladder, right? But that doesn't mean the fish isn't an effective being. You have to play the fish on its own terms, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And to make this very practical, what I think a parent can start with, so if somebody's listening and is like, oh my gosh, I really need to check if I'm actually honoring my child and their individuality and not pushing them into something that necessarily might not be their strength, is to highlight what they do well. So my friend Sarah gave me this great phrase, do you know that you are blank? So one of my children is so artistic. Oh my gosh, Evelyn, do you know that you do incredible drawings? Do you know that you are artistic? Children learn their self-worth, I think, primarily from their parents. Again, I have no statistical data, and I'm sure somebody who is more learned than I has already made this assertion, but I believe it's true that they learn so much of their self-worth from us as their moms and dads. And so I think it's our duty and our job to echo back, do you know that you're a caring big brother? Do you know that you are so funny and you make me laugh all the time? You know, I think that could be a really practical way to begin.
I do a lot of work in the corporate recognition space, and I have a colleague who once said, the worst thing that you can say to a child is good job. Because good job. So he uses the story about a child who was going through kind of a listening development. So it had problem hearing and stuff like that. And so they were going through a speech therapy, and every time the child would do something right, the therapist would say, good job. And he said the reason that is actually the wrong piece of feedback is because the kid's going, I don't know what I just did, but I guess it was good. What you just described was in a behavioral context is specifically describing what they're doing right, because that's the behavior they can repeat and they can build on and where that confidence comes from. I love that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think we can do the same thing to ourselves, if I may be so bold.
Yeah.
To bring it back to competition among mothers and the mother wars. Like, to say to ourselves, do you know that you are a great mom? And do you know that your choice to stay home full time is a choice that you made? And that's a great one. Like, I think if we could apply that same empathy back, instead of looking at the life of someone else and being like, oh, I have to, like, emulate my entire life after her, otherwise it's not success. Can we not apply this exact same system or this thing of recognition to ourselves and say, hey, you made a choice. For example, just using the example of staying home full time. You made a choice to stay home, and it's a great one, and you made it with, like, a lot of thought and careful planning.
Yeah.
So you know you're amazing for staying home. And similarly, for someone who has decided, with careful thought, to pursue work outside of the home while raising kids, same thing. Do you know that the contribution you make to your workplace is making a lot of difference? Do you know that you are, creating and providing for your family in meaningful ways? Like, I just think that we should apply that exact same recognition to ourselves.
Oh, yeah. That's such a great practice. I don't think many of us do that on a regular, at least. At least I don't. But Lisa, thank you so much.
Before she runs, let's find out a little bit more where we can find out about her.
Well, Lisa, will you be able to come back with us to get to answer some of the questions that we've gotten from social?
Oh, I'd love to stick around.
Perfect. That's great. So we're just going to take a break, and then we will be back with Lisa Canning. You are listening to Parents Canada Radio on News Talk Saga 960. If you do have any questions, we're at 416-640-0200. We'll be right back. Hello, and we are back. And we are back with Lisa Canning. Lisa, we have several questions that we've gathered from social media, but if you are listening and want to give us a call and, join in on the conversation, please give us a call at 416-640-0200, or you can reach us on social media at Parents Canada on all of our on all the platforms. So, Lisa, the first question that we have, one of the things I posted it on social last night, and I just got a lot of views on this topic, possibly because I put Mommy Wars really big on the picture. And a lot of people were like, the pressure is real. This is a great discussion. And one of the things that came in was this idea of, it's not okay to be good enough as a mother. You have to be perfect. And I think that fuels a lot of the competition that is going on. What say you around that? And how can we actually get over some of this perfect?
I think number one is the acknowledgement that perfect just doesn't exist. Like, it just does not. You can always strive for more. That's why it's so vicious and so challenging and really just not realistic. So that'd be number one. Number two, I think, is that if we can declare what success is to us, then we can free ourselves so much of guilt and so much of competition. So just for example, success could be, for one mom, working 2 hours a day on a blog or what have you, and then being able to be super present to her kids the rest of the day or when they come home from school. Success to another mom might be able to be home all the time and be very flexible to be available in a classroom. And success to another mom might be a corporate career and then being able to strategically plan her evenings so that she is not overwhelmed when she gets home and she is able to be present to her kids. Success can look so different to everyone, and it kind of should, because we're all on very different paths. And so my encouragement would be define success for yourself and define that uniquely based on your unique priorities.
We're seeing that a lot in the corporate world, this whole idea of understanding your purpose and trying to fulfill that. The classic line is, what's your why, sort of thing. And I talked about that on the very first show. I'm not a mom, but as a dad, I still have, a success metric for me. And I spent some serious time thinking about it, which is to say, when my kids are in their early 20s, they've got to make a choice, which is, what path am I going to follow to my future? And my job as a parent is to get them to that point so that they can feel that they have, the empathy, the education, the ability that they make that choice, and that choice isn't made for them. They can choose to pursue a career as opposed to they have to take a job. So I find that really, really interesting from that perspective, from the dad's view of things. But I think, again, learning much about the mom side of things.
Yeah, that was great. about the declaring your success and really defining that. One of the things I've heard you say is about measuring your motivation. And that goes to what you were just saying, Jason, the why behind it. So really, when you declare success for yourself, really understanding what is motivating you to do that. Yeah.
I also put some stuff out on social media. I got a couple of really interesting ones. I'll do the sports one first. So a friend of mine is a coach. And I asked him, I said, we always hear about, the hockey parents and the baseball parents and things like that and the sort of feedback. I said, my kids are arts kids. I don't get a chance to see this quite as frequently. What is your perspective? And he talked to me about this idea of parent goggles versus coach goggles. And often what'll happen as a coach, he says, is that you get parents come up to you with the parent goggles on and they will say to you, really the number one kind of objection he gets is, why isn't my kid on the ice more? They're better than that other kid. And he says, that's parent goggles. What he says he'll take time to do with every parent. He says he will listen to every parent and then he'll walk him through the process. And most of the time, vast majority of the time, the feedback he will get is, okay, I understand the choice that you're making. And he gave me a really great example. He says, if we could all just take coach goggles, it makes a huge difference. So he has a friend whose son is a baseball player, teenager. He said, look, I spend a lot of time around baseball diamonds. This kid has a legitimate chance of someday playing Major League Baseball, right? And I'm saying that as an outsider. He says, what's amazing is I talked to his dad, and his dad uses coach goggles because what his dad is trying to do is not compare him to other kids on the field, but looking to the child's future and say what will enable him the most. And so he takes a coach's approach, which is to say, I look at my son and I think, and I talk about this a lot from a comparative analysis perspective, not who is he compared to somebody else, but who is he compared to himself. And really that's the only metric or measurement that he uses, is to say, is he better at who he is than he was before? Is he improving in these specific behavioral areas? I found that to be really fascinating and could apply across the board. Any thoughts from your perspective?
I mean, can we not do that to ourselves? Right?
Yeah. Right.
Oh, my word, the freedom that would be there if we could just say, I'm not comparing myself against the fellow mom in the playground, but I'm comparing myself against my own standard. And the freedom that could come, I think, and the heartache and the stress and the lack of late nights making organic cupcakes and going homemade cups.
I've been there.
Okay, but
those things.
This is really good.
To do them.
So I'm going to give you an actual scenario that I had a conversation over. Okay, so my daughter headed up to the cottage, right? Friend's cottage with her mom, and she left her bathing suit at my house. So she had to use a bathing suit that didn't fit her quite that well, or she was going in the water in her shorts and things like that. And mom was rather upset, not necessarily with me, just rather upset that the original bathing suit that she'd bought for the trip went missing. And so I said, well, did she go swimming? And she said, yes, she went swimming. And I said, did this compromise her enjoyment of the swimming? And she said, no, it didn't compromise the enjoyment of the swimming. So what I came to realize is that, my daughter not wearing the proper bathing suit compared to the other kids who were wearing the proper bathing suit makes her maybe look like not a great mom. Again, I'm probably extrapolating a little bit and that sort of stuff, but I'm curious to know what's my, in the chessboard of life, what is my best move here to say, I hear you and you're right to be concerned or upset that you didn't have the bathing suit, but where does that line, where do we stop the line and kind of move forward?
I mean, that's a great question. But the thing that really stood out to me in that story is control, right? Mm-hmm. And how we just can't control everything. and despite our best efforts, you could have bought 10 baby suits and they could have gotten lost, got left behind, left behind, whatever. I think that's another area that children help us to grow in, is just the giving up of control and being happy with whatever. And I think really, just to your exact question, we have to decide sometimes, do we want to be right or do we want to be happy?
Oh, that line, I hear that line a few times from therapists. I've heard it from therapists. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? That's a really good line.
And so it's a choice. I mean, not to nitpick on, this particular situation, but, it's a choice. To be upset about the bathing suit would be a choice. To allow the bathing suit to impact your vacation or what have you, it's a choice. And so it's a similar thing. When you're in the schoolyard and you're feeling like, oh, the moms are looking down on me because I stay home with my kids all day, or you're feeling, oh, the moms are looking down on me because I go to an office all day, that's a choice. You can also choose to be like, you know what? I have made this decision in consultation with my family, in, great discernment. That's the key, I think, in this whole conversation, is that you actually think about why you're doing these things. And when you have, and you feel confident that this is going to get me, to put the coach's goggles on, this is going to get me where I want to go in life. This is going to get me to my most ideal life. This is going to get me to the, MBA, MLB. This is going to get me, whatever.
I wouldn't have known that, Lisa. Don't worry about it.
But, really, if we can take a picture of what do I want my ideal life to look like in 10 years, in 20 years, on my 65th birthday, at the end of my life, how do I actually want to be remembered? Am I going to really care if my kid was in the wrong bathing suit? I think that's where we can start to draw these lines of am I going to be right, or am I going to be happy?
Yeah. I think it's, just to take that further, because I understand Genevieve's issue with not having the right bathing suit.
I just want to say I didn't say her name, so you're the one getting in trouble, not me.
Sorry. So I get it, because I have been on that end. I understand, and I think it's my type A personality, and it is my always striving for perfection. I love things to look great, and there have been times where my kids have looked completely disheveled, and I have been embarrassed. And I'm like, oh God. I
am empathetic. When I saw that and I found the bathing suit, there was a 4-letter word that crossed my mind at the time, because that's my responsibility. It was sitting in my home. We live in 2 separate homes. Sitting in my home, I should have had that. You know what I should have done? I should have driven it up there. Then I would have been like a hero for 4 seconds.
Okay. You really would have been a hero. I wouldn't have gone that far.
No, but I think it's good stuff. So I know that we're coming to the end of the segment. I want to hear a little bit about your book and about kind of your life as a coach.
Yeah, so I help overwhelmed moms figure out how to pursue their personal goals and dreams while being great moms at the same time, and that's the key. So I pursued career success for many, many, many years, and unfortunately, my family suffered. My marriage was falling apart. I barely saw my very young kids, and so I realized that there had to be another way, that my dreams were not evil, my dreams were not wrong, but there had to be a different way I could pursue them without just constantly feeling guilty and sacrificing my health and losing the people who mattered most to me. And so the book, The Possibility Mom, How to Be a Great Mom and Pursue Dreams at the Same Time, is really, it's part memoir, but also very much how to design a life that captures and ensures that your priorities are all captured and in order, so that you can do both and do both with excellence.
That sounds great. I'm going to have to get a copy. Where can we get a copy?
Oh, anywhere you love to buy books, and then on my website, lisacanning.ca.
Lisa, thank you so much. Again, it really is, and we've been talking about this off air the last couple of shows. I think we're starting to hit our stride here, because I think we're surfacing a lot, and I think one of the biggest themes that's coming up is that parenting should be in a lot of ways about the parents, because there are a lot of vestigial elements that we're holding on to that we probably need to let go, and I think we learned a lot about that today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. For everyone else, we want to hear about your experiences with competitive parenting. Come and find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at Parents Canada. We're going to be back with some resources and to share what Lisa and I learned today. So you've been listening, or you are still listening to Parents Canada Talk Radio on News Talk Saga 960. Welcome back to Parents Canada Talk Radio. I'm Jason Thompson.
And I'm Lisa Durante.
We have had another spectacular, fascinating, enlightening hour. Again, we've been at this a while as parents, and I find that I'm still making some quantum leaps going forward. How about you? What did you learn today?
Yeah, the learning will never stop as a parent. Never. Even when I think I've got it figured out, even for my own 2 kids, the game kind of changes on me, and I've got to start from zero all over again. One of the things that I thought I think it was more of a reminder for me, is the idea, what Lisa was talking about, how we kind of tie up our self self-worth into our children. So if they are doing well in school, it's a reflection on us. And it's remembering that they are completely separate individuals. Yes, we are, we are helping to shape them and define them and give them the moral compass and the lessons and all of that good stuff. But at the same time, they are individual beings, and there's going to be things that are just completely themselves. They're going to look at problems very differently from yourself. They're going to, solve things differently. And it's just trying to keep that separation. I thought that was just a reminder. That was like my aha. I was like, okay, just got to remember. Because there are times I kind of fall into that little hole.
But the thing is that, I'm doing a lot of reading right now on neuroscience, and they talk about, like in every conversation, there's really kind of three things that are happening. There's the superficial item which you're dealing with. There's the emotional level. But that third level is about identity. And I think I think we're going to hear a lot more around the concept of identity, whether you're a parent or a teacher, whatever it is that you are, and how we identify what your identity is and what is an acceptable thing. Because oftentimes, and we heard it, I think, a number of times on the show, is really what's happening is you feel your identity is being attacked, right? And when you feel your identity is being attacked, that's really almost the core of your being, right? Is that if somebody says to you, at a playground where the mom, and I've had this happen before, the mom shows up with freezies or water and you don't have the freezies or the water, that suddenly you feel from an identity perspective that maybe this person is a better person or a better parent than you are, which...
Yeah, that's a big topic that I delve into quite a bit, write about and think about and talk about, is the identity shift that happens once you become a mom. And I think that's where a lot of this is coming from, because we know we have to, we have this idea of what the ideal mom is, and then we're each trying to strive for that and really fit into this new persona. And we're trying to, and many times you have to try on different masks or wear different hats or whatever the analogy will be to try to figure out which is the right one for you.
And to that end, I think that's what my learning I'm taking away is really to understand, what is the benchmark for success for you as a parent, right? What is your purpose? So more your decisions in that, right, is to say, am I progressing towards that outcome? And much like you described, this idea of looking at your kids individually and seeing, are you setting them up for success? So, I have 3 bio kids, 3 non-bio kids, and I look at them and I think to myself, the 18-year-old heading off to university that I'm a little frantic about at times and that sort of stuff, am I setting him up for success? That conversation yesterday around empathy pushes me towards that side. Have the 13-year-old who has perhaps confidence, particularly around traditional didactic education, is, setting her up at tutoring this summer and really kind of doing an assessment to understand where she is. That's pushing her towards success. The youngest one, which is about self-regulation, helping structure that, which is pushing her to success. But here's the weird part of all of that. All 3 of those things are things that I struggle with as an adult. So back to what we talked about is from an identity perspective, I'm absolutely seeing myself. So I see the 18-year-old and remember me at 18 years old sleeping until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock sometimes. Really? That actually happened. And my parents worrying, thinking, particularly my dad, saying, you're not going to amount to anything.
No.
Hey, guess what? I'm here on the radio. but no, truly saying, is that, I have to kind of almost trust that he's going to get there and say, I built the best lattice work that I can to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, it was just interesting. And a lot of things are just kind of bubbling up for me. There are just almost like scenarios with my kid that I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably what that was about. Around the homework, but one of the things that we've been trying a little bit more, because there's a lot of competition. We didn't really get to chat about it, is the competition between kids. And it's, how can we kind of squash that a little bit. And so really even reminding them that they are each individual. And so what each one needs is different. And then we're going to provide them what they need.
Right. Like if one has play date this week and the other one has play date next week, that's okay. They don't necessarily have to be given everything at the exact same time in the exact same way.
Exactly.
Who's got the bigger ice cream cone?
Oh, I know. Oh, my goodness.
just in case you did miss that, there was a really good eye roll there actually just happened.
I'm pretty good at the eye roll.
We've got some resources for you, by the way. if you want to come to parentscanada.com, brand new website, clean, excellent, easy to navigate, couple of topics that we covered here. There's something why you shouldn't compare your kids to one another, which I was like, oh, what a great topic. And I opened it up and realized I wrote it 6 years ago. So there's that one. How to manage FOMO parenting, which is something we're hearing a little bit more, and parental guilt and how to deal with it. That's a big one. Go check that one out because we do feel a lot of guilt as parents.
Yeah, so I think that's the end of yet another show. So thank you so much for listening. You have been listening to Parents Canada Talk Radio on News Talk 960. I'm Lisa Durante, and I'm here with
Jason Thompson.
And we cannot wait to come back next week, and we'll be chatting more with you.
We're going to talk food. We're going to talk food next week.
Food. Oh, yes. Food and kids, two things that I love.
Everything but chicken fingers. That's what we're going to call next week's show.
Please no chicken fingers. All right, and
Thanks for
we'll
listening,
see you.
everybody.
Yeah.